Welcome back, dear listeners, to History Whispers. I am your host, Mark Robinson. You're tuned in to our special series, Lessons from Books, where we dive deep into the most thought-provoking works and distill their wisdom for our modern lives. In today's episode, we turn the pages of Read People Like a Book, written by Patrick King. This is one of the most widely read books for those eager to understand human nature, how to analyze, predict, and respond to people's emotions, intentions, and behaviors. It's a modern manual for navigating the complexities of human interaction. So, without further ado, let's explore 7 profound lessons this insightful book offers. Lessons that can help us build stronger relationships, communicate effectively, and understand ourselves better. Lesson 1. Motivation drives all behavior. Let's start with perhaps the most eye-opening realization in Read People Like a Book. Everything people do has a motive. It's either to move towards something they desire or to escape something they fear. Patrick King explains this plainly. Every decision we make is based on gaining pleasure or avoiding pain. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but it's powerful when you really see it in action. Think about this for a moment. The colleague who stays late at work isn't just hard-working. They might be seeking the pleasure of recognition, the manager's praise, the sense of being indispensable. Or they might be avoiding the pain of feeling useless or dealing with problems at home. Patrick King also writes, if you can identify what someone is running toward or away from, you can begin to predict their behavior. Real-life example. Consider a friend who avoids difficult conversations. You might see it as carelessness or irresponsibility, but usually it's neither. More likely, it's about dodging the discomfort of confrontation, the fear of being disliked, of causing tension, of not having the right words. Patrick King suggests that even behaviors that look irrational make sense when you look at the underlying motive. He says, motivation doesn't always make sense logically, but it will always make sense emotionally. Another example, imagine a teenager who rebels and skips school. It's tempting to label it as defiance, but what if their real motive is to seek freedom, to gain the pleasure of independence, or to avoid the pain of feeling trapped by expectations? When you start seeing behavior through this lens, it changes everything. You stop taking things personally. You stop labeling people as bad, lazy, or difficult. Instead, you start asking the most important question. What is this person trying to gain or avoid? If you remember nothing else from this book, remember this, because as Patrick King says, understanding motivation is the master key to understanding behavior. Lesson 2. Context is everything in people reading. The second profound lesson Patrick King shares is deceptively simple, but often forgotten. Context matters more than any single gesture or reaction. He puts it perfectly. Behavior is meaningless in a void. We need to establish a baseline so that we know how to interpret what we see. This means that no matter how much you've read about body language, micro-expressions, or tone of voice, you can't truly understand what someone feels or intends without knowing the situation. King warns us, one of the most common mistakes in reading people is interpreting behavior in isolation. A single observation without context is almost guaranteed to be misleading. Real-life example. Imagine you walk into a meeting and you notice someone with crossed arms. Many people will immediately think, oh, they're closed off, defensive. But King reminds us to pause and ask, what is their baseline? What is the setting? Did they cross their arms because the air conditioning is blasting cold air? Are they tired? Do they always sit that way, even when they're happy? Context can transform the meaning of the same behavior from negative to neutral or even positive. Another example. Think about fidgeting. In isolation, you might assume someone is nervous, but King points out fidgeting can be a sign of boredom, restlessness, impatience, or simply excess energy. A teenager tapping their foot while you talk might not be anxious about what you're saying, they could just be waiting for the conversation to end. One more scenario. If someone avoids eye contact, we often assume they're hiding something. But in many cultures, avoiding eye contact is a sign of respect. Without understanding the cultural and personal context, you risk making false assumptions. Patrick King writes, "Context is your map, your compass, and your decoder ring, all at once." And this is the heart of Lesson 2. Before you label any behavior, always ask yourself, what else is going on here? What's the baseline for this person? What's the environment? Because when you pay attention to context, you move from guessing to understanding. Lesson 3. The power of nonverbal communication. The third lesson from Read People Like a Book is that words are only a tiny part of how we communicate. Patrick King writes, "Most of the communication that takes place between people is nonverbal in nature." This means that gestures, tone of voice, posture, and tiny facial expressions often carry more truth than spoken words ever can. King elaborates, "While words can be manipulated, rehearsed, or disguised, the body is far less likely to lie. The signals it sends are immediate and honest." Real-life example. Think about a time when you asked someone if they were okay, and they said, "I'm fine," but their arms were crossed, their shoulders were tense, and their lips pressed into a thin line. Even if you didn't consciously analyze these signals, you knew something was wrong. That's nonverbal communication, speaking louder than words. King explains that observing these cues can help you understand what someone is feeling even when they try to hide it. He writes, "Micro-expressions, those brief flashes of emotion, can reveal anger, sadness, or fear before a person has a chance to mask it." Example of micro-expressions. Imagine you're negotiating a deal. The other person smiles and says, "That works for me." But for a split second, you notice their eyebrows knit together in a fleeting frown. That's a micro-expression hinting at reluctance or disagreement. Another scenario. When someone leans toward you, it often signals interest or openness. When they angle their feet toward the exit, it can mean they're eager to leave no matter what they say. King encourages us to train ourselves to notice these subtle signals. To truly understand people, you must learn to listen with your eyes. This means watching how their posture changes when you speak, where their hands rest, whether their expressions match their words, and remembering that the body often speaks first and speaks the loudest. Takeaway. So the next time you're in a conversation, don't just hear what someone is saying, watch what they're showing you. As King puts it, your eyes will hear the truth long before your ears do. Lesson 4. The shadow self reveals hidden truths. The fourth lesson Patrick shares is as fascinating as it is challenging. We all have a shadow self. Drawing inspiration from Carl Jung, King explains that the shadow self includes all the parts of us we deny, repress, or feel ashamed to admit. These hidden traits don't simply disappear. They leak out through our behavior, often when we least expect it. As King puts it, if we can observe and understand these outward signs, we gain deep insight into character. Real-life example. Imagine a manager who constantly criticizes employees for being lazy, even though everyone is working hard. Underneath that criticism, there may be a hidden fear of his own inadequacy, the shadow of insecurity projected onto others. King writes, "What people judge most harshly in others is often a reflection of what they fear or dislike in themselves." Another example. Have you ever met someone who insists they never get jealous, but then they undermine friends' successes with passive-aggressive comments? That's the shadow self at work, envy that can't be admitted, so it slips out in indirect ways. One more scenario. A person who claims they don't care what others think, but is constantly seeking approval online. The shadow here is a deep need for validation that they can't acknowledge consciously. King explains, the shadow self often shows up in small cracks, a tight jaw, a mocking laugh, a sudden flash of anger over something trivial. These subtle cues reveal what people are fighting within themselves. Why does this matter? When you learn to spot the shadow, you stop taking people's reactions at face value. Instead, you start to see the deeper forces that drive them. Takeaway: spotting the shadow doesn't mean judging others, it means understanding them. It means seeing past their masks to their humanity. As King beautifully puts it, understanding the shadow is the art of seeing the hidden story behind every reaction. Lesson 5. The ego's defenses shape behavior. The fifth lesson Patrick King explores is about something we all use: defense mechanisms. When our self-image feels threatened, we automatically protect ourselves with denial, projection, rationalization, or avoidance. These defenses can be subtle, but they are incredibly revealing once you learn to spot them. As King writes, defense mechanisms are a powerful predictor of behavior. They allow us to maintain our sense of self even when reality contradicts it. Real-life example. Think about someone who consistently blames traffic for being late. It might sound harmless, but King explains that this is often rationalization, a way to avoid facing the truth that they struggle with time management or commitment. King notes, rationalizations are the stories we tell ourselves to make our actions acceptable even when we know they are not. Another example. Consider a coworker who loudly dismisses any suggestion they could improve. That's just how I am, they insist. This is often denial, refusing to acknowledge a flaw because it would feel too threatening to their self-concept. One more scenario. When someone criticizes others for traits they secretly dislike in themselves, like calling others arrogant while craving admiration, that's projection. King explains, projection is the mind's way of disguising unacceptable feelings by seeing them in someone else. Why does this matter? Recognizing defense mechanisms helps you respond with empathy rather than judgment. You start to see that behind defensiveness is usually fear. Fear of being unworthy, of failing, of not belonging. Takeaway. When you notice someone deflecting blame or rejecting feedback, remember King's insight. Defense mechanisms are windows into a person's private battles. Instead of reacting harshly, you can pause, reflect, and maybe even offer understanding. Because when you see past the defenses, you see the human being underneath. Lesson 6. You're not as good at reading people as you think. One of the most fascinating and humbling lessons in Read People Like a Book is that most of us are nowhere near as perceptive as we believe. Patrick King shares research that proves this point. He says, people consistently overestimate their ability to interpret nonverbal cues and hidden emotions. This illusion of competence is one of the biggest obstacles to truly understanding others. Real-life example. Have you ever been convinced that someone was angry with you, only to discover they were just tired? Or thought a friend was fine because they smiled, only to learn later they were struggling? These everyday experiences show how easily our assumptions fill in the blanks. King points to social intelligence tests where participants are asked to interpret microexpressions or predict feelings from short video clips. The results are sobering. He says, on average, people score no better than chance on detecting deception or hidden emotion. The accuracy rate is far lower than most of us expect. Another example. Think of a manager who prides themselves on reading their team. They assume a quiet employee is disengaged, but the truth is that person processes ideas internally and feels deeply committed. The manager's overconfidence leads to poor decisions and broken trust. Why does this matter? Because overestimating your people reading skills can create misunderstanding, misjudgment, and conflict. King writes, it is far better to approach every interaction with humility, to assume you could be wrong, and to gather more evidence before concluding what someone feels. Takeaway. Instead of jumping to conclusions, practice curiosity. Ask clarifying questions, like, how are you feeling about this? Observe patterns over time, not just in a single moment. Remind yourself, I might not be seeing the whole picture. As King beautifully puts it, the best people readers are not mind readers. They are humble observers who never stop learning. So next time you think you've figured someone out, pause. Consider that there might be more beneath the surface than your first impression allows. Lesson 7. Self-awareness is the foundation of understanding others. We've arrived at perhaps the most profound insight in Read People Like a Book. Before you can understand anyone else, you must learn to understand yourself. Patrick King writes, We become great people readers when we understand ourselves. At first, this may sound counterintuitive. After all, isn't reading people about observing them? But King explains that self-awareness is what allows you to filter out your own biases, projections, and assumptions. He warns, your own insecurities, past experiences, and desires will color how you interpret others. If you don't recognize these filters, you will mistake them for reality. Real-life example. Imagine you've been betrayed by someone you trusted. Later, you might see dishonesty everywhere, doubting people's motives even when there's no evidence. Without self-awareness, your past becomes a lens that distorts the present. Another example. If you crave approval, you might see friendliness where there is none, interpreting politeness as genuine care. Again, it's your own unmet needs shaping your perception. King shares, it's not just that we project our feelings onto others, it's that we can't help but do so. The only antidote is to question ourselves constantly. Practical steps King recommends. Notice when you have strong emotional reactions. Ask, what does this say about me? Reflect on past experiences that could be influencing your interpretations. Seek feedback from people you trust to challenge your assumptions. Takeaway. When you do this work, you start seeing people with more clarity and with more compassion. You understand that their behavior is about them, not you. As King puts it so powerfully, the path to understanding others is paved with the courage to look honestly at yourself. So remember, the more you learn about your own mind, the more accurately and kindly you will see everyone else. And that brings us to the end of today's journey into Read People Like a Book by Patrick King. These lessons remind us that reading people is not some magical superpower. It's a skill, a craft that anyone can learn with patience, curiosity, and compassion. The more we practice observing without judgment, the more we uncover about others and about ourselves. Because at the end of the day, understanding people isn't just about decoding their actions. It's about building trust, bridging gaps, and connecting in more authentic ways. I hope you found these insights as thought-provoking as I did. Maybe the next time you're in a conversation, you'll notice something new, a gesture, a glance, or a tone of voice that reveals a hidden layer beneath the surface. Thank you so much for joining me today here on History Whispers. It means a lot that you spend this time with me exploring the wisdom tucked away in great books. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves learning, and leave a comment below. Tell us which lesson resonated most with you, or which book you'd love to see featured next in our Lessons from Books series. And remember, every story has something to teach us if we're willing to listen closely. Until next time, keep learning, keep observing, and keep whispering with history. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.